to the Needle Bug. This is Karen, and today is Tuesday, February 5th. If you're already a subscriber, thank you for returning, and I do appreciate you joining us in the diagonal stitch with me. And if you're new to the channel, thank you, and I hope that you like what you see and that you will come back and visit often. What I thought I'd do today is I'd answer some of the questions I have gotten on previous videos, and I thought I'd do it this way by stitching with you, because for some of these questions it's a lot easier to show you how I do things as opposed to trying to type back an answer to you. So with that, I believe we shall get started. So the first question I had is, what count fabric am I using? Stitcher's Retreat, and that's the piece that I am currently working on, is done on 25 count Easy Guide fabric, which is the one that's manufactured by Zweigart, as opposed to the Magic Guide, which is a DMC. So I prefer, and I'm using the Easy Guide, just a personal preference. And that I would suggest, get a small piece of both and see which you like better. I personally prefer the Zweigart based fabric because it is Lugana and it is much softer to work with than the Magic Guide. Although when you're doing it on a scroll frame, it probably really doesn't make much difference. But this piece, in all honesty, has been on the scroll frame. It's been on Q-snaps. It's been worked on in a hoop. Of course, until I couldn't hold a hoop anymore. So now I'm back to having this on my scroll frame, because in light of, and thank you very much for all the suggestions you guys have given me in ways to handle my need to want to work on a half a dozen projects at a time, I really did come up with a way. I thought, what I'm going to do is let Stitcher's Retreat on my scroll frame and work on it only over here in my sun porch on my large floor stand. And when I'm in my living room is when I'm going to work on alternate projects. So right now I have over there Houses of Hawk Run Hollow. So I'll work on that in the evenings when I'm in the living room with my husband, and if I feel the need to rotate, I will switch what I'm doing over there. And this giant project will stay on this scroll frame and on this floor stand for as long as it takes to finish, if I ever get it finished. It's a big project. So with that, we will move on. So it is 25 count Easy Guide fabric by Zweigart that I am stitching on this project. Some of these questions, I have them written down, but some of them I'm going to answer as I get to it when I stitch. The other question I had from Lisa S. was, where do I get my fabric? And I already answered the kind and count. So she wanted to know where I purchase my fabric. When I'm using the Easy Grid, I normally purchase it directly from Heaven and Earth Designs. I know I can get it there. They normally always have it in stock. It's very rare that it is out of stock. So I do purchase it directly from them. Now, I will fess up a little bit here. I have ordered large pieces, so I have a bit of a stock of the Easy Count fabric, and then I cut my own to size. However, you can order specific to a size from them if that works best for you. I prefer to cut my own and serge my own edges. So I do get it from Heaven and Earth Designs. There are other places that do handle this same fabric. Whether you can get it in as large a pieces as you might need, in all honesty, I'm not sure of that because I have not, and I don't normally do that. So Lisa, I hope that answers your question. I do know that 1, 2, 3 Stitch carries some. ABC Stitch Therapy carries some. Those are the two places that I can think of off the top of my head. Irene B. asked me about my park threads. She observed that it looked at the point that I was stitching at on one of my videos, it looked like I was always parking down here in the next row. And honestly, depending on what part of the chart you're on, yes, it does. You don't have that many threads, so you're probably using them in every row. But she said, and she's correct, that her threads were kind of all over that block. And yes, again, I'm at a place where I don't have a lot of colors going. But yes, they will be all over the block. And yes, you are doing it correctly because the philosophy is park it in the next space that you're going to use that color. So you will see that happening a little bit more. So Irene, you are doing it right. Don't worry about that. And especially in a high confetti area, I could have 15 or more, just to pick a number, 15 or more threads parked. Like when I was over here working in this lamp, I had to be very careful and make sure I was parking correctly because there were, it doesn't quite look like it, but there were really quite a few colors in there. And I had a lot of threads parked. So yes, you're doing it right. The other question I had was, do I stitch more than one page at a time? And do I get page lines? Do you know what? I've done it both ways, okay? I've worked on the diagonal and I've kept my diagonals going so that I was actually crossing over between two pages. Let me see if I can show you a little bit here. Yeah, there I started, and actually my page ends right here. Now, what I'm trying now is, if I'm going to get mixed up and I'm going to get my threads out of whack, it's at a page break. So what I'm going to try now, and you can see I've already started it a little bit, is to feather my edge. And on my current chart, I'm feathering my edge within the last 3 stitches on the chart, so that when I go to the next page, these last 3 stitches are within the gray area, and then I can just continue on. And hopefully that will not get as confusing. So I will do it, continue diagonal, and that first part of the diagonal obviously is going to be feathered, and I will do that down the edge of the page. And while I'm here showing this is how I mark my chart. Some people, I use my Kindle, obviously, or any tablet that you choose to use is sufficient. I personally prefer to use the tool where you're drawing a straight line, and I draw a straight line up the side of the diagonal, and hopefully you can see that there. Maybe here it's a little clearer because the colors are a little bit lighter. And I know that where that line is intersecting the stitch, that's my 10th stitch of my current diagonal that I'm working on. As I stitch then, I'm trying to make sure I'm in the frame here. There we go. I just cross off the stitches that I've done, and you can see here that I did work ahead a little bit right here where I could do that because I had all the stitches completed above it. So I'm going to be working here when I start to stitch after we've kind of gotten through a little bit of these questions that I don't necessarily need to stitch to show you. But as I do these, what I will do then is draw a line through or highlight the ones that I have stitched. Now you will see that there's different colors. And the reason I'm doing that is because I'm in the Stitch Talk Challenge and I'm currently working on the 100 days and the trip around the world. So what I do is I change color every day. And sometimes, as you see here, I've already counted, so I even write in, okay, I was to 500 stitches that day, yesterday. And now I'm on to today, and so far I've done 100. Well, 105 exactly. So I'm hoping I have it figured out how many stitches a day I need to do to be able to complete this within a year. So that's the other thing I'm doing so that I don't get bored just working on this project. I'm doing my required number of stitches, making sure I get my required number of stitches a day. And once I get that, then in my mind, I'm free to work on something else. Whether it be something else over here in the porch or whether it be something else in the evening. So I try to get my 150 stitches in during my time that I spend over here in my sunroom, which then frees me up for other things the rest of the day. So basically that's how I mark my chart. So what I will do is I will just highlight across here when these are done and just keep marking that way. For those of you that use paper, you can do it the same way. Draw your line through your diagonal on the paper and then just with a highlighter, with a pencil, however, mark them off when you have completed them. Okay, so that's how we do that. Back over here, out of the way. So now that answers those questions. I honestly didn't write down the name, but there was a person that asked, I have showed you in the past how to do a pin stitch, and when I'm ready to start a new thread again, I will show you that again. And someone asked if I ever do the pin stitch as the first leg of my cross stitch. And the answer to that is yes, I do. However, I have found that when I'm working on 25 count fabric, I prefer not to do it that way because I don't think my stitches look as nice when I do it that way. If I'm cross stitching on linen and I'm going to do a pin stitch, yes, I will often do it as the first leg of the cross stitch, and that basically saves you having to go back and do that first leg. You just cross and you're good to go. So yes, I will do that. So we're going to work on this a little bit, and then when we get to the points where I can show you something to answer a question, we're going to do that. Okay, gotta pause here a second. Okay, now we're back. It helps when you remember to mark off the rows that you completed. I was working on the wrong row. No wonder I was so confused. Oh, geez, sometimes. Let's do this. Let me see. I think we're in here close enough. I had the question about how do you keep your stitches from slipping. Normally, I don't do this. I just stitch, and I think my tension is okay, that my stitches don't slip. But if you're having trouble, and let me zoom you in just a little bit closer. There we go. If you're having trouble with your stitches slipping, there is a method. Well, there's several actually. But the method I use is if you look at the weave of your fabric, okay, now I have this thread, so I'm going to work this stitch right here, okay. You can see that the fabric thread is on top, okay. So in order to keep your stitch from slipping, what you do, and now I do lower left to upper right, okay, and remember that your fabric thread is vertically, your top thread is vertical at this point. So I'm going to complete the first leg. Now this is the way I would normally stitch. However, with a vertical thread, my carry on the back should go the same direction as that top thread of the fabric. So that stitch is not going to slip because it's locked underneath the horizontal thread, and it can't slip out. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to park this one over here, and I'm going to mark it off on my chart that I did it. Now I'm going to do this one, and this one will give you a little better idea. Do you see here, this thread, the top thread is horizontal, okay, see it goes across. So when I stitch that stitch, all right, I'm going to complete my first leg as I normally do, but instead of coming up here like we normally would, I'm going to come up here, because my thread in the back will then go the same direction as the fabric thread, and I'm going to complete it this way. Now I do more of this stitch, so I'm going to go over here, and again complete the thread. Fabric thread is vertical, so I'm going to complete the first part of the X, go to the bottom, come up, complete my stitch. And I have 3 of this color, so I'm going to go to the bottom, do the first half. Here it's horizontal, so I'm going to go over here and complete my stitch. Third one of this color, same thing. It's vertical, so I'm going to go here. So what you're doing is you're alternating, and then they will not slip. I have one more over here, and that's a vertical one again. So we're going to complete that, and then I'm going to park down here. Okay? All right. So that means I did that, those 3. Okay. And again, this one is horizontal, so I'm going to come up here. Now, the only thing I don't like about doing it this way is, and I parked this color at the wrong place, so we're going to fix that, is the fact that I have to come up in, quote unquote, a dirty hole, which means the hole already has 2 or 3 threads in it, and I don't particularly like to do that. However, with this needle that I'm now using, it isn't quite as bad. With this, can you see it? It's the Easy Glide needle, has the ball on the end. It does, I think overall it does make your stitches neater, and I don't have near as much trouble if I come up in a dirty hole, that it pulls the threads up. So that's what you can do if you have a lot of trouble with your threads slipping. Now, a lot of it is tension related, and what I do, and it takes a little practice, and it takes learning the feel of your thread, but I only ever just pull my thread until it stops. I don't give it any extra tugs. So once it stops, I'm done pulling on that thread. And I kind of, as you saw, kind of use this finger, and that helps me to feel that. So it is just a matter of practice and learning the feel of your thread when you're stitching. Oh, there's a hair. My kitty hairs. Okay, here we go. Mark those off. We did those. Sorry that my arm's in your way. Now let's see where we have to park this, or if we can end it off. Looks like we're going to end this one off. So let me rethread here. And I apologize if there's any shaking in this. I have it mounted, the arm for my camera mounted right on my floor stand, so hopefully it's doing okay. Now, I am going to pin stitch end this one. So, you've seen me do a pin stitch before, but we'll do it again. For those of you who are having trouble maybe having your pin, how can I say it? Your pin stitch being, I'm trying to get this little hair. I should have brought my tweezers. Yeah, they're not over here. If you know those same horizontal and vertical threads, when I see a thread that's horizontal, then I'm going to end my pin stitch in that direction, okay? So I'm going to come up on the side, go down in the middle, come up on the opposite side, and I think I missed the middle on that one. No, not necessarily. Come up on the opposite side, go down, in the middle. And as you see, it then totally falls in between the threads that you pierced, and you're not even going to see it. Okay? And then clip it off so that you can hardly see that there's even a pin stitch there. If your top thread is vertical, then I would do it in a vertical direction, and that hides it. It's the same thing when you're working it on Aida cloth. You can see that the weave of those threads, it's either predominantly, at each square, it's either predominantly horizontally or predominantly vertical, and you do the same thing. You go with that flow, and then you can hide it a little better. Irene, I think you were having trouble with your, was it 16 count fabric that you were working on, and you were using 2 strands of threads. Why don't you try that instead of always maybe making your pin stitch in a vertical direction? Look at the weave of the fabric and see if you can go more with the predominant weave in that square and see if that helps you. If they show a little bit, it really is not that big a deal, because you are going to stitch over it. Or since you're using a larger count fabric, it's a bit easier to do that pin stitch as the bottom leg of your X, so that what you would be doing is coming up in the corner that you would normally start to do the first leg of your X. Come up in the corner, go down in the middle, come up in the top corner, go down in the middle, and then you have made the first leg of your X, and then come up in the corner that you would use then to complete your X. Okay, and then you don't have to worry about hiding it, and you are using 2 threads, so that should work like I said, that should work perfectly for you. But try that and see if that doesn't help. If you're still having trouble, let me know. And my next video, I have a piece of 11. I don't have any 18 count fabric because I don't normally use that. I do have a piece of 11 count that I have gotten just to do use for some demonstrations. So if you're still having trouble, I'll put that on a Q-snap, and I'll try and show you in a video of maybe some other suggestions of what we can do to help alleviate what your problem is. And please let me know what it is, or what part of that you're having difficulty with, so that we can get it straightened out for you. Hopefully I'm going to have to start a thread here soon so that I can show you how I start my threads. If not, I'll jump down to a place and start one, just so that you can see it. I can just complete that X and park it there. That's not going to really hurt anything. So let me give a gander after I do these 3 and park it to see where I have to start one next. And as far as needle size, I had the question also, what size needle do I use? I always used to use size 28 for everything. And then, like a lot of you out there, I had issue with my threads starting to fray. And your thread frays because your needle isn't quite opening your the hole in your fabric enough, and then the thread in the eye of the needle is pulling so much against the fabric, and it's being abraded, and then that causes it to get thinner and thinner and thinner, and then the next thing you know, you pull you pull through, and you have a hunk of thread on your needle, and the rest is kind of just hanging there. So what I've done is I now use a size 26. And about the only time I use a 28 anymore is if I'm stitching on the very, very fine or the very, very small count fabrics, like your 40. 40 anymore is about the lowest I will go, and to be honest, these old eyes are having trouble seeing that without a really good magnifier. My cheater glasses aren't working so good for 40 count anymore, so I really have to use my Dazor or my it's not a Mighty Bright, but it's similar to that, Brighten magnifier, because I really do have trouble seeing 40 count at this stage of the game. My eyes aren't getting any younger, as is neither am I. So I really only use a size 28 needle on that anymore. The rest I have used 26s. And to be perfectly honest, at this point in time, because I love... Did I park that wrong? Skip to... Yeah, I missed that. I parked that wrong by one. I like these Easy Glides. Oh no, that's wrong. I know. Skip to... Hold on a sec. Just let me check this color here. Okay. See, it happens to the best of us. Anyway, since I have started using these Easy Glide needles, I parked this one in the wrong hole. That's what's the problem. I really am not even using my Bohin 26s, which is sad, very, very sad, because the last time I bought needles, and Heaven and Earth had them in the packs of 1,000. Yeah, yeah, that's what I bought. I have 1,000, well, not anymore 1,000 of them, but I will never, ever, 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 ever have to buy another needle. So if anybody likes some 26 Bohin needles, let me know. I'll be happy to send you some. Just leave me a message. And I'll send you some because I have more needles than any one person should have. And the reason I bought so many was because I tarnish them so easy. These Easy Glide needles will discolor. However, they don't tarnish. They will discolor, and I shine them up by taking them through some emery, and that shines them right back up. But the whole needle is stainless steel. Okay, so they're not going to tarnish. And even though it discolors, it still stitches today, 6 months later, like it did the first day I got it. So I really don't know that I'm going to have to buy a lot of needles anymore. Whereas, and as I started to say, the reason I bought so many bowhin needles was because when I stitch with those, I would be changing my needle about every week. Because what happens is the needle itself is made from a metal alloy, and to be perfectly honest, I can't tell you what exactly that base is, but then it's nickel plated. So that silver is just plated onto the alloy. So what happens is the acid in my skin wears off the nickel plating, and then I'm reacting with the alloy that tarnishes. And then when I pull it through the fabric, I can feel it. I can feel it drag. So I get rid of it and get a new needle. Because I don't like that drag. But since I have found these needles, these don't do that. Not at all. So, as I said, if anybody would like some bowhin needles, let me know. I'll send you some. I have about 800 left. And will I use them? Yes, I will use some. So I won't give them all away, but I will give some away. And it's, if you're interested in some or you would like some, it's first come, first serve. When I have given enough away that I want to keep the rest, I'll let you know. 2, 3, 4. Oops, don't want to do that. Back it up. No. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4 from the corner. Here we go. Yeah, sometimes I have to stop talking so that I don't get myself too confused. What I'm going to do is, oh geez, since we're almost at a half an hour plus the other video, and it's getting a little long, and I like to keep them relatively reasonable length. I'm going to stitch these few stitches, and then I see where I have to start a color, and it's 2 rows down. So I'm just going to jump down and start that color for you. Obviously, I've shown you how to start your threads with a pin stitch in the past, and you can look back at previous videos to find that. I think it was the one I know for sure has in the title and starting a new heaven and earth design. That has that whole first row of starting that piece is nothing but pin stitches. So you could look back to that video. There's also one that has a pin stitch tutorial in it. You can check that one out. So that will give you the idea, how to start a pin stitch. The other method I use, if you watch Nikki's Crafts, she starts hers by a lasso method, and she flips her frame over. Well, for me, the less I have to flip my frame, the better I like it. So it's basically my own version of a lasso method. Rita Marie, I think you asked me about that. And basically my stopping threads without flipping is a pin stitch, and that's what I do most often. The other thing I do sometimes is just carry a length, bring it up, snip it short, and stitch over it. You know, and that's just fine too, but I don't want to get confused with, is that parked there and just short, or... So I've been ending with a pin stitch. And you don't have to travel far away to do your pin stitch. You can do it in the very next stitch or the very next row, or you can do it very close. You don't have to leave a little length to stitch over, because that pin stitch is very secure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So the way I start most times, if I'm not going to do a pin stitch, and that's fine, but I do start this way more often than not, because it's a little bit quicker. So I go away a little bit from the place that I'm going to where my stitch is going to be. 2, 3. It's in the 4th one here. So I come up to do my bottom leg. Okay. I go down as if I'm going to, but I don't pull it all the way through. And then I kind of slide up from underneath, so I'm sure I catch this tail, come up, and I've caught the tail. I pull this in just a bit to get rid of that, and then just complete my stitch. And yes, it is secure, because as you see, it wasn't going anywhere. So that really is all. It is a lasso method, but it's done all from the front. Okay, so that's how I start them. You might want to stop and rewind it, because I don't have anything else to start, but it's just a matter of using a little bit of an away thread, come up, do your first leg, don't pull it all the way through, come up to start your second leg. Once you've pulled that, you can feel it tighten across the back, pull that loop and get rid of the end, and then just complete your stitch, and you should have caught it. Do I catch it on the first go every time? No, sometimes I have to redo it or do it again, but it still, for me, is a lot faster than trying to do a pin stitch every time that I start. So that is how I do that. So with that, folks, I think we're gonna end it here. Hopefully this has helped you guys. Didn't have too much chit chat today, because we had a lot of questions to answer. So keep your questions coming. And as I said before, we're going to try and do these at least every 2 weeks. Maybe sometimes every week. Depends on, do I get a lot of questions, or do we just sit and stitch together and chit chat? Either one is fine with me. I don't always have a lot to chit chat about, but we'll think of something to ramble on about, because I can ramble. So with that, I'm going to bid you all farewell, and thank you all for watching and for coming back and for subscribing. Almost at 4,000 subscribers. You guys are awesome. And thank you all for your suggestions on how to deal with my craziness of wanting to start and stitch on a gazillion different projects, because, you know, as soon as we see it, we think we have to stitch it. So I think I've come up with a way to satisfy that itch, so to speak. So in my next video, well, I'll let you know how that's going. So with that, I will say goodbye for today, and thank you all for the privilege of allowing me into your home and for visiting with you. So have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you next time.